Hi, I'm Steve Smith with the Wired Family, and this is the first episode of a new program we're starting called The Silent Experiment, where we're going to look at the technology, the business model, the apps, and the psychology behind the very devices that we placed in the hands of our kids and our grandkids. You know, my book, Social Media and the Adolescent Digital Tribe, we looked at these topics that are changing a generation, the first generation that has had access to the world, with the world having access to them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, sometimes as young as 4 and 5 years of age. What families are experiencing today is a silent experiment on the most vulnerable among us, many times simply in the name of profit. How many of us would give our kids ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Is ice cream inherently wrong? Of course it's not. But when it's consumed in significant volumes, it can lead to diseases such as diabetes. So from a mental health, a physical safety, and emotional perspective, the same might be true with social media. For example, texting at 2 a.m. and playing video games for hours and constant scrolling the screens, it's not good for the young brain. So as parents, we all have enough guilt to sink a battleship, right? Many moms and dads shuttle kids to soccer practice, help them with homework, go to PTO meetings, often trying to volunteer when possible, while also trying to be good spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, and friends. You might even try to slip a few minutes in there during the week for a trip to the golf course or the gym, for a little bit of me time. So I'm not going to guilt you with the adolescent digital tribe that you and I have unknowingly helped to create. However, whose fault is it if our kids and grandkids have unfettered access to social media and the world without the tools to filter out what's right and what's wrong? Now, let's be honest. It's on us. Short of taking all technology out of your child's hands, there is no guarantee of protection. Yet that's not necessarily the preferred solution either. If it's used properly, technology can be a great thing. This series gives you a behind-the-scenes look at the technology that the adolescent digital tribe is using. We'll speak with experts in the field of psychology, education, law enforcement, marketing, and those involved in creating the same technology your kids are using. So we hope you find this information helpful, maybe when you're driving in your car, listening to the audio version of this, or at home on any of the devices while you're sitting on your couch. So our first interview is with Bill Ammerman, a veteran marketing executive, author, and a very sought-after speaker who was involved in the early days of online marketing and perhaps understands the technology and the human psychology behind it better than anyone that I've known. Bill recently wrote the award-winning book, The Invisible Brand, Marketing in the Age of Automation, Big Data, Machine Learning. Now, those words might seem like boring gobbledygook, but they are in fact perhaps what is driving the silent experiment being used on your kids and my grandkids. Now, I recently had the opportunity to speak with Bill on how these technologies are impacting a generation of young people. You've spent a lot of time working with artificial intelligence, understanding artificial intelligence and algorithms. And, you know, the cool thing is all of these things have really brought advancements in different industries. And I would say maybe even in particular to the medical industry. But can algorithms and artificial intelligence be used to change the hearts and minds, particularly of young people?
Absolutely. And it already is. I think that's the most important message, is that this isn't a future technology. This is already upon us. It has been actively changing us for years, and it's only going to get more effective. In my book, I wrote about psychotechnology, which is a portmanteau of psychological and technology. This is technology that changes us psychologically. And one example I can give you is the known psychological tactic of the appeal to consensus. Appeal to consensus is basically, hey, everyone else is doing it, so should you. And AI creates the impression by delivering information to you in volume that shows other people behaving in a specific way. Now, The reality is everybody on planet Earth isn't doing this, but AI can make it seem like that to children. So AI has the power to deliver messaging, to deliver TikTok videos and YouTube videos and search results and even the comments and reviews and these kind of reinforcing recommendations back to people through their devices that they're continuously glued to create the impression that everybody's doing that. Now, take for example, the movement out in, some of the Western states to legalize hallucinogenic mushrooms, or take what's going on in China with the Uyghur, genocide. It is conceptually possible to put in front of a young person the idea that taking hallucinogenic mushrooms is a great thing, and you could build an entire catalog of videos and things that somebody could be exposed to that enforce that idea. Now imagine that instead of someone seeking out that information, that information is continuously put in front of that young person in all of the different social media interactions that they have, that the social media posts that they view, that the TikTok videos that they view, all contain this positive message about, hey, how great it is to take hallucinogenic mushrooms. Similarly, imagine, and the scary thing is this is real. China has built a massive point system for rewarding people for good behaviors and punishing people for bad behaviors with a social credit system. Now imagine that you are a Uyghur in the Xinjiang province, and you have been put in internment camps, concentration camps, and the entire population is gradually being turned against you. They are being fed information that suggests you are a horrible person, and all of the information that they're ever exposed to, if they're exposed to any at all, about the Uyghur population is negative. This creates an opportunity for an oppressive government to actually turn a population against an ethnic group in that society and commit atrocities. So this is not just affecting children, and it's not just affecting teens, but it's affecting all of us, and it is currently being deployed at a massive scale by real governments on this planet at this moment.
And isn't that the reason where you finally have Democrats and Republicans actually agreeing to a certain extent about the dangers of TikTok, is that for all intents and purposes, it's owned by the Chinese Communist Party, right? Under ByteDance, but really under the government of China, and that you have millions, not just Americans, but Indians, Pakistanis, and people around the globe, particularly teens around the globe, using something that with a few tweaks of the algorithm could change the hearts and minds of an entire generation, a global generation. Correct?
That is absolutely correct. And not only have you identified the content delivery mechanism, but another fear is the data collection mechanism. One of the ways that we can bully people on the internet is by knowing a lot about them. And when you know a lot about someone, you find the triggers, you find the tools, the ways that you can actually manipulate that person. And the AI is very good at zeroing in on the things that you're afraid of, the things that make you angry, the things that make you happy, and rewarding you and creating positive rewards for the things that they want to persuade you about, and creating negative triggers around the things that they want to dissuade you from.
And I know you've done a lot of work in terms of online advertising, and but in the world of apps, not really talking about necessarily the world of online, HTML types of ads, but how do online platforms really kind of create these dopamine surges, particularly in young people, to keep them attached to the product? Because as we know, the longer a young person is on a particular app, the more data that can be collected, the more that you can kind of really begin to understand about that individual. And so the value of that individual as a user goes up. But how do they go about creating these dopamine surges to assure that they're actually going to come back to that app on a daily basis?
I like to think of dopamine as our body's reward system. I actually wrote about this in the book and did a lot of research on it. Forgive this oversimplification, but dopamine is just one of dozens of neurotransmitters that influence our behavior. But dopamine does appear to be very, very closely related to our desires, our ambitions, our addictions, and our drives, what drives us. And in my book, there's an illustration, actually, a picture that I created of a Facebook like. It's given a thumbs up, and it triggers this dopamine drip in this little girl who's left laying in this puddle of hearts, kind of blissfully enjoying the fact that she got her Facebook like. The goal of this technology is not to provide us information, it's to keep us viewing the screen, right? So when we see that the goal is to keep you viewing the screen, we reward the behavior of looking at the screen with things that trigger dopamine drip. So, most people can't resist the little number 1 or 2 or 3 associated with the icon on their phone that indicates someone has commented, liked, or shared their video or their photo. And so, it's all about me, share my stuff, comment on my stuff, like my stuff. And if you do, I'm going to come immediately back, like Pavlov's dog. I'm going to come right back to that phone, and I'm going to see what you said. I'm going to see what you shared. I'm going to see what you liked. And so this kind of reinforcing behavior of I like, I share, I do these, activities that keep me coming back reinforces this addictive behavior. I'm continuously coming back. Famously, Sean Parker, who was the founding president of Facebook, said Facebook exploits a vulnerability in human psychology. I love that phrase. I mean, he nailed it. He said that. It exploits a vulnerability in human psychology. And dopamine is that impulse that pushes us over the edge into action. As we're considering what we could do, dopamine is that thing that pushes us into action. People call it brain hacking. People call it compulsion loops. I think of it as a kind of a high-tech hijacking of our dopamine system. And it's very powerful.
So, how do social media platforms use artificial intelligence and algorithms, sometimes for us, but sometimes against us?
Yeah, I think of this as religious level persuasion, and it's being sold to the highest bidder in the marketplace, but it's also in the hands of teenagers. And they're very good at using this technology to manipulate their peers. And at the very top of my list of dangers would be the various internet challenges that exist. These take the form of dares, but at a global scale. When I was a kid, somebody dared me to jump off a high, diving board tower, and I did it. You get dared as a kid, but now these dares have become, they can reach millions of kids. And I had the pleasure of seeing my young daughter come downstairs after, going in her room and doing the Kylie Jenner lip challenge, in which she actually put her mouth up against a drinking glass, and sucked hard enough to give herself a circular hickey around her mouth and literally a purple bruise. And, okay, you may say, well, okay, that's harmless. But the reality is, we've got these ice bucket challenges, these Tide Pod challenges, these cinnamon challenges, the sunburn challenge, where you mark yourself with suntan lotion, and then you go get the worst sunburn you can so that you can show off whatever tattoo you've created with suntan lotion. Car surfing challenges. I mean, this stuff is genuinely dangerous. And when you think about, throw into that mix drug use, throw into that mix dares around sex, you can start to see that teenagers are in control of highly persuasive technology in in a way that they can actually manipulate the behavior of other teenagers and children, preteen children, through these dares and challenges. So I would mark that as my, if I was speaking to a group of pediatricians, I would say, alerting parents to the dangers of these dares and online challenges is a big project. And I think we need to get the word out and understand that we've placed in the hands of irresponsible young people the power to persuade and change the behavior of other young people. And we need to think about that. That's really important.
And so the advantage to the app owner, we'll just say TikTok, for example, because they've been behind a lot of the challenges. The advantage to them, even though they get a lot of bad publicity, is they get more views and they get more money, right?
Keep people glued to that screen.
Do you have concerns about how these technologies might really change the very nature of society? And if so, how is it doing it? So how are these things that we use on our devices, both adults and children, with we're using on a day in and day out basis? How might they actually change this little thing here, change who we are as a society?
Well, as I mentioned, it's already changing us. It's not a future, it's a now, and it's actually past tense. It's been changing us for years. Um, Tim Berners-Lee, who is often referred to as the father of the World Wide Web, said, if you put a drop of love into Twitter, it seems to decay. But if you put in a drop of hatred, you actually feel it propagates more strongly. And I wrote about this in the book. I really want people to understand, it started out as 140 characters. And if you want to motivate someone, it's a lot easier to motivate someone with hate in 140 characters than it is with love. Love is something that develops over time. It's something we develop for our mother, our family, our friends, our tribe, if you will, our town and our community. Fear is something that can be motivating at a moment's notice. There's a tiger in the village, grab your spear, and of course that's very motivating. And so when we think about why, I think that's part of the answer, is that fear and hatred are easy triggers to motivate us to action. And so let's get personal for a second. And for your audience, each of you listening to this right now, I want you to think, you're intelligent, objective, highly educated people, you're doctors, you're professionals. You tend to believe, and we all want to, that we are above being manipulated by this technology. But I want you to reflect on something, and I'm going to tie this into a National Academy of Sciences study that just came out, fresh off the presses, came out June 29th, called Outgroup Animosity Drives Engagement on Social Media. I want you to reflect on our society and what you have experienced over the course of the 2016 and the 2020 elections. Right now, you, and I'm talking about you personally, have a well-defined outgroup. Those terrible people. I don't care what your political persuasion is. You have in your mind a group of people that you think of, those terrible people. And those terrible people have manipulated elections. You saw in 2016 the advent of the resistance movement, a rejection of the election of the president, and this notion that, this is an illegitimate presidency. You see the exact same thing in reverse in 2020, a rejection of the election and an illegitimacy of the president. This idea that as Americans, we have created animosity towards outgroups, those terrible people, and we're all guilty. I'm guilty and you're guilty. We have in our minds a group of those terrible people. So let's think about what this survey, or not survey, this scientific study from the National Academy of Sciences actually teaches us. First of all, when we think about outgroups, we're talking about, those terrible people. We're talking about the enemy. We're talking about people that are the other. And this survey, or this scientific study, determined that divisive content targeting outgroups is shared and more likely to go viral by as many as 7 times over appeals to moral judgment. So just try to let that sink in for a second. It is 7 times easier to make something go viral on social media if you define an evil other, this terrible outgroup, and hurl bombastic nastiness at them. And that is what is driving a lot of what people are experiencing. Your feelings that there is this terrible outgroup, that there is this evil other, that we're rejecting our presidential elections, we're questioning our democratic principles, should let you know that yes, not only is it possible that this technology can influence us and change us, but I would tell you straight up, it has already changed you, and it's changed me, and it's changing our society in very dangerous ways. And I want people to take this very seriously. It is the most important challenge we face as a society today, is understanding how this stuff is already at work changing us.
And it's, in effect, it's created a tribalism, but it isn't just through Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, right? Cable television, cable news is a perfect example of it, right? The promos that they use, the programming that they use is basically set up on both sides, one side to attack the other. But it's a fascinating statistic that a hateful tweet, basically against the opposing party, will get more likes or retweets or shares than one that suggests something which is more balanced. Fascinating stuff. I want to thank Bill Ammerman for taking the time to speak with us today about this technology and its impact on the adolescent digital tribe that we adults have created. And you can learn more about the subject from his book, The Invisible Brand, Marketing in the Age of Automation, Big Data, Machine Learning. And you'll also find information in my book, Social Media and the Adolescent Digital Tribe, Navigating the Teen World State. Now, if there's one item you take from this book or this program concerning being a parent in the digital world, it would be to talk to your kids and ask questions, and more importantly, listen to your child's response at every opportunity. If you're driving them to school, talk to them. If you're at the dinner table, talk to them. If you're together in your living room, talk to them. The adolescent digital tribe, of which your child is a member, is talking to their global tribe in music, TV, films, social media, billboards, on the street, in the cafeteria, and in the classroom. This is their filter bubble. Your words and actions are just a small part of what your children ingest each day. But they are the most important words that your child's going to hear. So whether you're a conservative, a liberal, or an independent, we all are facing the same challenges. But allow me to leave you with a quote from former First Lady Barbara Bush. At the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, or not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with your husband, a friend, a child, or a parent. So in closing, good luck with the most critical job you'll ever have in your lifetime, being present and being a parent. So until next time, I'm Steve Smith from the Wired Family with the program, The Silent Experiment.